Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing? It's cold out there, isn't it? Very quickly, bit like old times this morning. I went live and the first person in the chat was Ken Hatcher, just as it used to be. Looks like he's well wrapped up for the weather as well. Morning, Ken. Good of you to join us. Who else do we have here? Footy's in the house as well. Excuse me. And Alex Latham is here as well. So we can get the party started. I'll tell you about it in just a moment. I've got a video rendering in the background featuring Demolition. Yes, we haven't seen it for quite some time, but there's a video rendering in the background. Hopefully it will stop rendering by the time we actually get to it, and I'll be able to bring it to you this morning. But good morning to Jim Turner, who has just joined us as well. Morning, Jim. What's going on there? That doesn't appear to be right. That's better. Morning, Jim. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. How's the weather where you are? I would imagine just as chilly as it is everywhere else. I'm off to Holland next week, Wednesday and Thursday next week. I'll be in Holland. And the weather is about 3 degrees warmer than it is there. And I'm actually looking forward to it because just that slight increase. Still be bloody cold, but it's I'm looking forward to nonetheless. So while the chat is filling up, I'm going to say good morning to all of those that are watching over on Instagram as well. While the chat is warming up, I'm going to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road, starting with this. It is Friday the 29th, Friday the 29th of November. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. There's going to be a problem all day, I think. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, Caterpillar wheels out a new dozer. Literally wheels out. XCMG steals the show at Bauma China. We're on the road with one of the biggest dump trucks in the entire world. And in Las Vegas, the post-implosion cleanup continues at the Tropicana. Plus, in my morning monologue, I'm going to be asking if we need a greater penalty for and a deterrent against site fatalities. Good morning to Tristan Mays, who's just popped up over on Instagram. And if that wasn't enough, there may, it's going to be touch and go, but there may be a guest appearance from Ms. Demolition later in the show. Her latest report is rendering as we speak, so hopefully I'll be able to bring that to you between now and roughly 11 or thereabouts. But before we get to any of that, we do have the small matter of our mystery machine today. And two things. The league table is over and done with. Dan Cullen won for the third, possibly the fourth month in succession. So he's already got the prize in the bag. So we're only playing for fun today. But I haven't seen Dan in the chat yet. Apparently, according to the WhatsApp group, he went to start a new job and was told his presence wasn't required. So he's on his way back home again. So you have a clear, well, as it stands at the moment, you have a clear run at the mystery machine, which I will show you just after this. Now, bearing in mind, Tristan Mays has a certain viewpoint on all things of Chinese origin. I said that XCMG steals the show at Bauma China. Over on Instagram, he has said XCMG steals the show and the design of Liebherr products. I couldn't possibly comment. Just on that subject, is there anything going on in terms of anti-dumping and stuff like that within the crane industry? I know we've got it in excavators. Don't know what's going on over there in terms of cranes. Mick Norton is in the house as well. Now, question of the day we've already asked, which is what is your favourite soup? We'll come back to that in just a moment. Dan's Footy says, I bet Dan is well unhappy how he's getting treated by the agencies at the moment. Yeah, I bet he is as well. Now, again, in his absence, let's have a look at the mystery machine, which looks like this. There you are. I'm looking for, as always, a make and a model. It is only for fun today. Dan has romped away with the prize yet again. So we are just playing for fun. But if you can identify what that is, I'd love to hear from you. Let me take that away and remind you very quickly of our question of the day, which looks like this. Yeah, inspired by the cold winter's day that is lurking outside my window, what is your favourite soup? That is our question of the day today. Now, I've never tried this, but I reckon I could talk about soup for hours. My go-to, much the same. I mean, Chris Ward and I are largely in agreement on most things, I think. But my go-to is definitely Heinz tomato soup. He is the same. And I would say it is my go-to, even though it generally gives me heartburn. But I'm willing to tolerate that. I also love sachets of, not cans, but sachets. You know, the ones that you add boiling water to. Chicken noodle soup. Love me a bit of that. If I'm feeling a bit poncy, which happens quite a bit, lobster bisque. And if I'm feeling a bit unwell, Heinz chicken soup, cream of chicken soup. That's the way we roll around these places. But what about you? What is your favourite soup? I'm going to say good morning to Ali. I'm going to have a go. Ali Baluli. Am I close? If you can offer me any assistance. But good morning, Ali. Thank you very much indeed for joining us over on Facebook. Lovely to see you here. What do we got here? Footy says, this time of year, if you've got to have soup, you've got to have something with lots of chunky and goodness in it. Smoke prepared, smoked meat, nice chunk of bread. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm all about the dunkage. You've got to have something to dunk in your soup. Another vote for Heinz tomato. It looks like Heinz tomato. Not that there's a prize for the best soup in the world on this show, but that's 3 votes for the Heinz tomato. It does take some beating, doesn't it? And if I go to a restaurant and there's soup on the menu, I often have the soup. I don't have a problem with that. Would never eat tomato soup in a restaurant because you just know in advance it's not going to be Heinz, is it? Anywho, there is a mystery machine. I'm going to show you a little bit more. Yes, it has a cab, so it's not an autonomous machine. There is somebody sat in that at times. Jim Turner is going for Scotch broth. Yeah, my wife likes a bit of Scotch broth. Footy says, I also like a pot noodle, mushroom, with chicken soup at the top makes it a lot better. Jim Turner, plenty of pearl barley. Yeah, that's one of the primary reasons that I eat stew is just for the pearl barley. Don't know what that says about me as a person. Don't really care, to be honest. I'll be back with something slightly unusual from Caterpillar in just a moment. So you know dozers. You know all about dozers. Big old blade at the front, possibly a ripper at the back, big old set of tracks. Sometimes. Yeah, wheel dozer. Don't see many of those around. I've seen a few of them in power stations pushing coal and stuff like that. But a wheel dozer from Caterpillar. Awesome looking piece of kit. Now, what do we got here? My other half has just joined the chat. She's poorly, bless her. Very poorly at the moment. She's had a cough, cold, COVID, the lurgy, plague. As I said the other day, she's had yellow fever, black fever, night fever. She's had all of those and she's still poorly. So soup for her today. Mark Whiting's here as well. Morning all. Sorry I'm late. Go stand in the corner and write out 100 times. Don't do any of those things. Always welcome, Mark, regardless of what time you turn up. Good of you to join us. Ian Woolley just joined us over on Instagram as well. Who else have we got there? No names that I can readily identify, but lots of people watching over there. So we'll come back to all of that in just a moment. For Mark Whiting, who has just joined us, let me recap on the Mystery Machine, which looks like that. And there's a bit more. Does that help in any way? Looking for a make and a model, if you would be so kind. Not the most straightforward machine today, I don't think. Be quite nice to finish the month with a victory, even though it will make no difference to the league table. But yeah, see what you can come up with on that. While you're pondering that, I shall press this button and then I'll be back. We're going back to Las Vegas in a moment.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, somewhat annoyingly, while I was at the Mine Expo show in Las Vegas back in September, we were a week away from the Tropicana hotel and resort being imploded. I wish I could have stayed. I couldn't. I did film it while it was still stood there. There wasn't much going on, but it came down in spectacular style back at the beginning of October. Now the fun starts. The cleanup is underway, and this is what it looks like. Wish I was in Las Vegas right now. It's a lot warmer there. It's interesting watching that. I don't know if you could see it, but between that site and the MGM Grand, which was in the background, there's a Tropicana sign still on the Las Vegas Boulevard. I was actually stood under that when I was filming it, whenever it was, a couple of months ago. P. McEwen Sons have just joined us over on Instagram. Good morning to P. McEwen Sons. Just trying to make out what the picture on your Instagram profile is. It looks like the back end of a possibly a Hitachi, maybe. James Faulkner is here as well. Mark Fitz is here as well. Dan Cullen has just arrived, so everybody stand by your beds when I show the mystery machine. We should probably be losing around about that point. Ken Hatcher saying about that Tropicana, yeah, they absolutely shattered that concrete to powder. Obviously, the blast does part of it, but the sheer weight and gravity does the rest. But Dan Cullen says, good morning, all from an eventful morning, fantastic morning. Have the start for Monday with a UK-wide company. Good. Let's hope there's actually a job there this time, eh? Let's hope so. So now Dan is here. There we are. That is the mystery machine. And I can tell you that Footy has gone for loading shovel, not particularly specific, but it's not right either. It is not a loading shovel. There you are. There is a smidge more. Feel free to keep guessing on that. Yeah, keep the guesses coming in. What have you got coming up? Oh, yes, we've just been to Las Vegas. We're going to China next, immediately after this. I said I'd like to be in Vegas right now. Wouldn't mind have been to being in China either. For those of you that know, Bauma China is taking place as we speak, and XCMG put on one hell of a display. Check this out. That was a lot of green, wasn't it? Yeah, lots and lots of electric there. Ken Hatcher just saying China's taking over. Does feel like that at times. Although now we have these, or possibly having these anti-dumping duties. Maybe not. Galvin just said, yeah, might have to go to the next one. Very interested to see it all. I think it would be hard. He's talking about Bauma China. I think it would be hard. You can get by at Bauma Germany, because most of the stands, have a smattering of English and you can make yourself understood. I think China would be hard, but just to see it as a sheer spectacle, I've no major desire to go to China particularly, but to go to a show or to go to one of the manufacturers, I'd love to do that. Frank over at Diacon Demo has just joined us. Frank, I have a suggestion for you, sir. I don't know if you've seen it, but the Institute of Demolition Engineers has just opened the doors for international membership. So you can actually get yourself an internationally recognized a formal academic qualification through the IDE. Frank, I think you'd be a dead ringer for that. Now, going back to Mystery Machine, what have we got? Dan Cullen reckons it could be a Komatsu. Could be. Ken Hatcher reckons it's the cat wheel dozer, which we featured earlier. I wouldn't do that. That would be far too easy. Dan Cullen is going more specific. He reckons it's a GF675-7. It is not one of those. And he also reckons it's a GD675-7. It's none of those things. All right, let me show you a bit more. There you are. That's what you're looking at. Dan Cullen enjoying Bauma China. Wow, fantastic video. And the tune works too. The tune was nothing to do with me. I chose the tune on the Tropicana one, which nobody mentioned. Just saying. You put all this work in and it just falls flat, doesn't it? Don't know why I bother sometimes. We've definitely got one more film for you, which is a Komatsu film, funnily enough. And we may have another one after that. There's no way of checking. So keep an eye out for that in just a moment. I'll be back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
For those of you that pitched up late, just let me explain. We've got a new Demolition film. The script was done, filming was done, the audio was done, and it was all rendering in the background. Now, the problem I've got is the fact I can see it's finished rendering, but I'm looking at all of you lot on that channel there, and I'm looking at all of Instagram on that channel there. I've got no way of actually playing it without you seeing it. So after the film I'm about to show you, I'm going to play it, keep my fingers crossed, and we'll watch it together for the first time. I've not seen it yet. It may be a disaster. I honestly don't know. We'll come back to that in just a moment. What is the chat saying? So, Chris Ford reckons that our mystery machine could be a Komatsu WA250-11. It is not. It could be a WA270-8. It is not one of those. And it is not a WA380-8 from Dan Cullen either. Mick Norton, going back to our question of the day, pea and ham soup cures coughs, colds, and sore holes. Do you eat it to cure the sore hole, or do you apply it? On second thoughts, don't answer that question. Just hold that thought. Let me show you a bit more of the mystery machine. There you are. Keep the guesses coming. We've got one more official film, which is Komatsu. We've got another one that's unofficial. So the door is still open for somebody to snatch victory on that one. So, yes, Komatsu, one of the biggest dump trucks in the world. Not the biggest, because we know that's the Belaz, but this is one of the biggest. And it's quite the beast.
In mining, autonomous means a very controlled process. So it's about reducing the variability and making everything work as it should.
A couple of the advantages that customers report is an increase in productivity and reduction in their total cost of ownership.
One of the biggest benefits is the truck. The truck itself is very reliable, the best truck in the market. It just consistently runs. We have customers with the same trucks running for more than 10 years.
The safety factor, it certainly reduces the number of operators and exposure to the mining environment. You know, when mines commit to autonomous, they're putting all their trust in you. I think the biggest thing we have really is the experience. You don't just go out and put this system in. the experience that we have, we can bring that to these mine sites and make them successful.
We try to work with customers from the onset all the way to the actual implementation so that we can give them some tools and leverage our experience in the market to help them manage through those challenges.
People can learn new things and be part of this. We want people to be part of this journey as well. I think it's a space for everybody in this.
I'll pop back to the mystery machine in just a moment because we've had another couple of comments on that. But Mick Norton says, Australia leads the way with autonomous equipment. Here in the UK, we only dabble at the edges of what technology can offer. I wonder if that's I mean, those mines in Australia, I mean, they're vast, huge amounts of money, and they're also pretty much permanent. I wonder if the scale of operations that we have here, obviously we've got Glen Sander off the coast of Scotland, which is pretty big, but I wonder if we have the scale. And I also wonder, and I don't know the Australian economy, but here in the UK, where you've got an economy that kind of does that, it's up and it's down and it's up and it's down, can you actually commit to that level of change and autonomy and technology? I wonder. Going back to the mystery machine, there we are. That's what we're looking at the moment. Footy says, is it a roller with a blade on the front of it? No. And Chris Ford says, is it a JCB 416S? It is not. I'm going to take it away because I can't actually remember how many more slides I can show you. I can show you a bit more. Let me put it back on the screen. Take Chris away. There you are. There is a smidgen more. Keep the S's coming in because I'm going to play you this and then I'm going to try and get Demi on the show and see if I can make that work. Back after this.
Hi, I'm Holly. Join Mark Anthony on The Breakfast Show. We are Ovenden.
Right, need you all to keep your fingers crossed now because, well, the film I'm about to play you, I haven't been able to test it. I don't know if it plays or not. It may have no sound. It may have no picture. It may have nothing at all. Honestly, don't know. So let me bring it up on the screen and see if I can show it to you now. Fingers crossed, people.
Construction equipment has expended its new generation of hydraulic excavators with the addition of 3 mid-size crawler models that will compete in the 28 to 42-ton weight class. The EC260, EC300, and EC360 excavators complete the company's most ambitious launch lineup, all of which boast increased productivity, enhanced safety, and a host of cab upgrades. While the EC300 is a new generation machine, the all-new EC260 and EC360 replace the EC250 and EC350 respectively in the Volvo lineup. The excavator cabs feature several updates designed to improve operator comfort, productivity, and safety. These include an updated seat, a larger side mirror, and additional lights, sunscreens, and storage areas, as well as a keyless start with the ability to store multiple operator preference settings. An improved human-machine interface and a larger, higher-resolution co-pilot display provide a much more modern environment. The Volvo Smart View with obstacle detection with its HD camera and new radar detection system gives operators 360-degree visibility of the machine's surroundings and the ability to distinguish between objects and humans. Safe access, operation, and servicing are also ensured thanks to existing features, such as the new 3-point access to the cab from the right side of the machine and the orange seatbelt with locking alarm. Longer service intervals, together with improved serviceability with more ground-level access points, grouped filters, and lubrication points, not only ensure a lower total cost of ownership, but make maintenance faster and easier than ever before. The innovative electro-hydraulic system, integrated already as part of the previous model series, helps to dramatically reduce fuel consumption and lower operating costs by regulating engine speed and hydraulic flow rate based on the task at hand. Thanks to its intelligent use of electronic sensors to monitor operator movements, the result is smooth and precise control for the most accurate digging and loading. The machines also benefit from proven digital solutions such as Volvo Active Control, part of the suite of Dig Assist tools, to speed up operations with faster cycle times and reduced operating costs. The machine control system, together with an advanced electric joystick, automate boom and bucket movement for precision and efficiency. The must-have Dig Assist tool ensures unrivaled machine guidance and control technology, enabling operators to work with the highest levels of precision and accuracy. While the addition of onboard weighing provides real-time insights into the bucket's load, helping to eliminate overloading, underloading, reweighing, and waiting time. The new models will be available in Europe over the coming months.
I think that largely worked. It may have just been my screen. Bit of a flicker on that. Don't know quite what that was, but yeah. Back to the mystery machine. Thank you, Demi. Fine work as ever. Chris Ford is going for the he's going for the Komatsu WD-420. It is not one of those. He's also going for the Cat 824K. Nope. He's also going for the Brenner 1240. Nope. And he's also... It seems like Chris is looking for a last dash on this month's mystery machine. It's not an 814 wheel dozer either. However, when you said 814 wheel dozer, you were certainly in the right ballpark, because I can tell you right now, that's what it is. That right there is a Komatsu WD 600-6R. It is a wheel dozer. Thought the Caterpillar one at the beginning of the show might have been a clue. Turns out it wasn't. So, yeah, I'm going to chuck that one up to me. Makes no difference whatsoever. But that means I won yesterday and I won today as well. As always, too little, too late. That's the story of my life. Right, okay, I've got a morning monologue for you where we're talking about death and destruction. It's not exactly a cheery way to go into the weekend, but, you know, it's the nature of the beast and the industry that we live in. So I'll be back immediately after this. I'm supposed to do a thing right about now, aren't I? Yeah. That's about it for the main part of this morning show. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to roll the outro. Blah, 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 blah. If you can't stick around, please do stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very soon. Have a good weekend, everybody, if you can't stick around. If you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back immediately after this. Dan Cullen's just said, Komatsu WD 660. It's not one of those. It's actually a 600. And he then says, I just got it, but well done. Lol. Cheers, Dan. Thanks for letting me win my own competition. Right, okay. Serious face, because we're talking about site fatalities, sadly. I don't know if anybody saw in the news. There's been a prosecution of somebody. I think the young guy was killed by a falling telehandler or whatever it might be. I can't actually remember the full details, but that's what inspired it. So this is the morning monologue. Let me start by saying that I don't want to see anyone banged up. That's not the solution I'm advocating for. Justice shouldn't be about vengeance, nor is it about scapegoating. Let me also state for the record that I'm deeply uncomfortable with the notion of corporate manslaughter charges being levelled against a senior company director who's never actually set foot on the site where a fatal accident occurred. But my personal discomfort doesn't erase a grim reality. Financial penalties we currently impose on employers involved in fatal accidents aren't working. They don't serve as a deterrent. If they did, I wouldn't be sat here discussing this now. Instead, there's a pattern, a post-fatality playbook. I wrote about it not so long ago, and I talked about it here on the show, and I'll say it again now. There's a proven, well-trodden path that companies can follow to sidestep the consequences of a fatal accident. A fatality occurs, fines are handed down, and before the ink is dry, these companies find ways to cut and run, often leaving death, grief, and financial ruin in their wake. So what's next? If financial penalties are insufficient, what other options do we have? Let's start with directorial bans. The idea has merit, of course. If you're at the helm of a company where negligence occurs, perhaps you shouldn't be allowed to remain in a position of authority. But this approach has its complications. For a small construction or demolition firm where the managing director is often seen walking the site, chatting with workers and making decisions on the ground, a directorial ban might seem justifiable. The buck, as they say, stops with them. But scale changes everything. What about larger companies operating dozens of sites across the country? Are we really going to say that a managing director, someone whose duty of care might extend to employing competent people and ensuring systems are in place, should bear ultimate responsibility for every incident? Is it fair to hold them accountable for the mistakes, deliberate or otherwise, of a site manager or a subcontractor they may have never even met? Feels like shaky ground to me. And if we're questioning directorial bans, we need to tread even more carefully when discussing custodial sentences. Now, don't get me wrong, there should be exceptions. If evidence proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that someone, a director, project manager, or a site supervisor, willfully cut corners, ignored warnings, or neglected their duty of care, then perhaps prison is appropriate. A deliberate act of negligence that endangers lives deserves the severest consequence. But here's where I find myself conflicted. No one in the demolition or construction industry wakes up today and says, I'm going to put lives at risk. At least I hope they don't. And yet, between 2023 and 2024, 51 construction workers never made it home. They didn't clock off and head home to their families. They didn't get a second chance. They went straight from their work sites to the morgue. 51 lives lost, 51 families shattered, and countless friends and colleagues left to grieve. The human cost is incalculable. But the financial penalties, they're all too easy to calculate and they're all too easy to sidestep. The current system isn't working. It's as clear as day. So where does that leave us? How do we balance accountability with fairness? For starters, we need to dismantle this idea that responsibility can always be deflected up the chain of command. Yes, leadership carries weight. Yes, managing directors and operations directors have a duty of care. But accountability must also lie with those directly involved in the day-to-day operations. Site managers, project leaders, health and safety officers, all of them play critical roles in preventing accidents. If we only look to penalise those at the top, we risk overlooking those whose actions or inaction, should I say, had the most immediate impact. That said, we also can't ignore the culture fostered by those at the top. A company's leadership sets the tone for its approach to safety. When deadlines are prioritised over diligence, when budgets trump basic precautions, when workers feel pressured to cut corners to meet unrealistic targets, that's on the leadership. That's where the accountability should lie. But accountability isn't just about penalties. It should be about prevention. What if, instead of focusing solely on punishment after the fact, we finally adopted systems that made it impossible for those accidents to happen in the first place? More rigorous training, better oversight, mandatory audits by independent bodies. They're all proactive steps that could potentially save lives. And let's talk for a moment about whistleblowing. How many workers see dangers on their job sites but stay silent out of fear? Fear of retaliation, fear of losing their jobs. We need to create an environment where speaking up isn't just encouraged, it's rewarded. If someone spots a hazard and raises the alarm, they're not a troublemaker, they're a lifesaver. Still, none of this solves the problem entirely. There will always be risks in this industry. That's the nature of construction and demolition. But risk doesn't mean inevitability. The fact that 51 workers lost their lives isn't a tragic twist of fate. It's a sign that we all failed, collectively. We failed to enforce standards. We failed to hold the right people accountable. We failed to prioritise human life over profit. And here's the thing, every one of those failures is preventable. Maybe that's where the real deterrent lies. Not in fines or bans or prison sentences, but in a complete overhaul of how we think about accountability. We need to stop treating fatalities as isolated incidents and start seeing them for what they are, systemic failures. When someone dies on a work site, it's not a freak accident. It's a sign that something went wrong at every level of the chain. I'm just a journalist. I don't have all the answers, but I do know this. The status quo isn't enough. It's not enough for the families left behind, for the co-workers haunted by what they've seen, or for the industry as a whole. We can do better. We must do better. Because at the end of the day, it's not about punishment. It's about prevention. It's about making sure that every worker who clocks in has the choice to clock out again. It's about ensuring that no one else will ever hear the words, there's been an accident, or worse still, someone's been killed. And if we can't do that, then maybe we deserve to feel uncomfortable. Maybe we deserve to ask ourselves the hard questions. Maybe it's time to demand more from an industry that claims to have a focus on health and safety. Yes, that's my feelings on things. Dan Cullen says, the financial situation is a joke in this industry. What is a life worth to your company? Yeah. You listen, I'm preaching to the choir here. If somebody dies on a site, everybody's shocked, everybody's horrified, and so on down the line. In an ideal world, the people that witnessed the accident that led to the fatality will receive some sort of counselling. But the same day, the same week, the same month, that job will start again. The person that left in an ambulance or possibly in a body bag will have been replaced, and the wheels continue to move. And then it goes over to the prosecutors, the health and safety executive, and the investigating authorities, whose wheels also move, but move much more slowly. And in the background, the financial machinations begin, because you've now got, if you play your cards right as a major contractor, you've probably got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years in which to gradually wind down the company that was responsible or was in charge of the site when the accident happened. So when the prosecutors do come along and say, we would fine you £1 million, but we've checked your accounts and you've only got £3.50 to your name, which is weird because there's a Range Rover and a Bentley parked on the drive, and the company seems to have a slightly different name these days. But there's nothing we can do about it. That's the issue we have. Mick Norton says, vicarious liability for employers and their directors must remain, or we enter a world where those in charge continuously dodge their responsibilities. Come back to that in a second. We need to push the CPS and HSE to expand the custodial sentences available, but are rarely imposed, even with proven charges of corporate manslaughter. So a couple of things there. I'm certainly not suggesting we do away with vicarious liability. I'm not suggesting that one moment. But this idea of dodging their responsibilities, are they not doing that already? If we had a perfect health and safety system, would anyone have been injured or killed in the first place? And then this dodging responsibility, you can certainly dodge your financial responsibility. You can do that very, very easily. Just wind down or collapse the company that was responsible and just go and start up somewhere else. Pushing the CPS, I've got a question on this, Mick, because I did try to find the answer before I started spouting forth, and I couldn't actually find it. Can the health and safety executive actually, not impose, but call for custodial sentences? I don't know quite what I'm sure there is a legal framework for that. Can they and should they, or is this down entirely to the CPS? I don't know the answer to that. Expand the custodial sentences. I mean, I genuinely can't remember the last time I read about or talked about or reported on a custodial sentence handed down to somebody that was considered to be directly negligent or responsible for a fatal accident. I genuinely can't remember the last time that was the case. And again, this is another question, Mick, because you know the inner machinations of the health and safety executive way, way better than I do. What is it? Maybe 10, 12 years since we got the fees for intervention. So effectively, the health and safety executive became self-financing. I'm asking the question, did that shift the HSE focus? Was there a time back in the day, pre-FFI, where the health and safety executive would push for custodial sentences, directorial bans, and financial repercussions? Or have they, now that they need fines in order to basically pay their own way, is there now a greater focus on fines? Now, I realise not all of the money from a fine goes to the HSE. I know that much, but I wonder about the focus. Think about something like a DIDCOT, for example. Come February the 23rd, that investigation will have been running for 9 years. Investigations don't run themselves. There will have been a cost. I would imagine the lion's share of the cost will probably be with the Thames Valley Police, because they have primacy in that case. But the Health and Safety Executive will have been liaising and probably assisting with that investigation at the same time. So how much has the Health and Safety Executive actually invested in the DIDCOT investigation? Millions, probably. So is their focus, again, I'm asking the question, I'm playing devil's advocate here, is their focus providing justice to the families of the 4 guys that died? Or is their focus these days, let's get as much money through the door as we possibly can, because we've been pissing about with this for the last 9 years? And for DIDCOT, read Redcar and so on down the line. It's DIDCOT is an extreme example, but it's certainly not unique. Dan Cullen says there are so many hoops to go through after a fatality on a site, and as you said, by the time the HSE takes up to court, the company is liquidated. Is this partial reason so many companies going down? I don't think that's the reason companies are going down. And unfortunately, I mean, it's going to take me quite a bit of time to research it, because I did try to do it using AI and stuff like that. But it has become, as I refer to it, has become a post-fatality playbook. The number of times, when you see one company being prosecuted for a fatality, oh, that's a shame. They've gone out of business and they can only afford, a fine of £35.60. That. You'd go, that's the nature of the industry. Companies come, companies go. We understand that. But when it becomes 2 companies, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 50, when it becomes so evident that we've had a fatality, the Health and Safety Executive will do their thing, the investigating authorities will do their thing. While they're doing that, I'm going to sit down with my legal eagles and my accountant to work out how to minimise the financial impact upon me and my family. It's there. It's in black and white. There is a paper trail of this. And I'm astounded, given that, I'm not the smartest tool in the box. If I can spot it, and I've got to be honest with you, when I wrote about the post-fatality playbook a couple of weeks ago, a number of people that said, yeah, that's the way it works. It wasn't like I'd lifted the veil from their eyes. Everybody knows it's going on. So why doesn't the Health and Safety Executive? Mick Norton says, the CPS call the shots. In my view, yes, the HSE did shift their focus since the intro of FFI. They are seriously under-resourced compared to 10 years ago. Defining breaches of legislation are the main remit for the HSE. Yeah, and therein lies the issue. You could loosely, back in the day, describe the Health and Safety Executive as the industry police, not just construction and demolition, but cross industry, so factories and warehouses. But they were the industry police. You kind of walked around on your eyelashes just in case you had a snap visit from the HSE inspector, because it was like bobbies on the beat. They could turn up at any moment and they could point out faults. And then I can't remember when FFI came in. Was it 2008, 9, something like that? I can't actually remember. But when we made that switch, the focus seemed to change. Now, as Mick has rightly said, they are under-resourced, underfunded, understaffed. I understand all of that. But without that police force, without that Bobby on the beat potentially popping onto your site and saying, that is wrong, you're fined or you're prosecuted or whatever it might be, do we actually have that deterrent anymore? And my feeling is we don't. And ultimately, one of the saddest things I think about this industry, the construction and demolition industry, is our insistence upon waiting for legislation to guide us. Rather than looking at an issue and saying, That's the direction that we should go, legally, morally, environmentally. We wait for rules to be imposed. Think about electric machines. Even setting aside all your arguments about charging times and lifespan of batteries and all that kind of thing, there are applications whereby electric machines are better in every way, shape, and form. They're quieter, no emissions. So if you're doing internal demolition and that kind of thing, you're working in a live school, live hospital, whatever it might be, then an electric machine is better than a diesel, regardless of any arguments. But rather than a plant hire company or a contractor or a demolition contractor going electric, it's the way forward. We're basically waiting. We're sat on our hands waiting for Sadiq Khan, Keir Starmer, somebody to come along and say, henceforth, you must use electric machines. We'll have exactly the same with hydrogen. We've got exactly the same thing with safety. We all know the risks. We all know the hazards. It's a drum that I can't stop beating. The biggest killer, aside from asbestos, the biggest killer of people on site in this industry right here, right now, is falls from height. We have remote-controlled machines. We have advanced methodologies. So why are we still sending men and women to work at height? Because it's my belief that we will continue to do so until somebody in government comes along and says, working at height stops now. Much the same as we outlawed sending children up chimneys, that stops today. Stop right now. It never happens again. At which point the industry will go, okay, fair dues. Yeah, I can understand that. We'll find another way. So why aren't you finding another way now? That's my question. Dan Cullen says the HSE needs a full makeover, and I've never seen an HSE rep visit a site. They now have a company-owned HSE guy, but always a day beforehand warning, so everything is in order when they show up. What's the point? I mean, there's no point to that. I'll say the same about that. I'll say exactly the same about the NFDC site audit scheme. If you've got warning, there is no point. Because what you're seeing is not real. You're getting a false narrative. Quick, the NFDC auditor or the HSE inspector or the occupational nurse that's doing tests for drink and drugs is on their way on Tuesday next week. If you are likely to be on the wacky backy over the weekend, don't come in Monday, Tuesday. If you are a really, really piss poor operator, don't turn up on Tuesday because the health and safety executive is going to be here. If all of your paperwork isn't up to date right now, you need to go away over the weekend and make sure it is up to date before the NFDC auditor arrives on Tuesday morning. Gene Turner says it's human nature to look after yourself and your family and divert funds to get out of paying a fine. So it's just the authority for letting them get away with it that's to blame. I know what you're saying, Jim, and I do know you have a very, very good way of cutting to the chase. But company owners, company directors, those in positions of authority, managers, supervisors, they have a duty of care. Having already failed in that duty of care to allow somebody to be injured or worse still to be killed, should your duty of care not then be amplified and reinforced to make sure that having already failed and allowing somebody to die, should you not be stepping up and making sure that at least their family are taken care of, rather than doing everything in your power to make sure that you're okay and bollocks on them? And I like I say, I know exactly what you're saying, and I can't actually argue with it because I know what I would do. But should we be allowing that? I mean, ultimately, the whole premise of that article was we shouldn't be allowing accidents. That's, if we could prevent accidents, if we could outlaw accidents, basically consign them to the history books, this conversation would be utterly meaningless. It'd be a moot point, or as Joey and Friends once said, a moo point. It's like a cow's opinion, doesn't matter. Mick Norton says, experts tell me it's not the HSE dragging their heels, it's the hugely overcrowded court systems. Yeah. And because of the position that I have the benefit of being able to see, getting a pretty much an overview of all the bits and pieces. I'm not an expert in anything. You've probably gathered that by now. I'm not an expert in anything, but I do have my finger in a lot of pies. I get to see oversight. Those that are in the court and the judicial system, are they aware of the fact that while they're dragging their heels and they're taking people to court that should never be in court, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. While they're doing that, there are companies and there are company directors basically shunning their responsibility because you've allowed them the time to do so. And just going back, and this was, I don't know, 7 years ago, I did jury service. The case was dismissed, so I can talk about it fairly readily now. Basically, it was two guys, probably about 30 years old, rolled out of a pub one night, got into a fight, a couple of punches were thrown, no major incident. The Rozzers arrived, arrested the pair of them, and decided to prosecute. And the evidence was laid out in about the first half an hour. And I sat there and I thought to myself, I can't believe something as inconsequential as this is actually taking up court time. So we listened to it for about 2 hours, went for a coffee break, walked into the break area, and literally, 12 jurors, 12 good men and true, sat there and went, what a bloody waste of time this is. Absolute waste of time. So we did a whole day, and then we did the morning the following day. The judge got to hear all the evidence, and in the end he went, I'm not entirely sure why this case has been brought before me. Case dismissed. So we lost a day and a bit. How many times is that happening up and down the country? And I always fall back on this as an example. How many, young mums, single mothers, have been caught nicking a tin of baked beans to feed their child? Is that really court worthy? Is it really? When there is corporate manslaughter, but when there's, major murders and rapes and, paedophilia and all that going on, should we really be focusing on that sort of nonsense? And I'm not saying we give everybody carte blanche. It's not the purge. You can't just go around stealing shit willy-nilly. I understand that. But should we be, at a time when bearing in mind we're still making up the backlog from COVID, should we really be concentrating on these minor things when there are major things to concern ourselves with? Dan Cullen says, exactly, no point. It's a waste of time and effort. Footy says, is there going... Always struggle with these. If they're doing a drugs test and you're on medication, especially cocodamol or your heart tablets, don't bother going in like me. Get drug tested, lose your job. Yeah, it is an issue. It is an issue. And you're not the first person that's raised that with me either. Dan Cullen says, guys, have a fantastic weekend. See you Monday. Break is at 10 a.m. Good. Stay safe. Look after yourselves and family. Hopefully there's no storms this weekend. Fingers crossed. Jim Turner says, the two are totally different things. Any firm with any scruples would pay the worker or family compensation. I'm talking about industry fines. But if going back to the fact that the health and safety executive are no longer the industry Bobby on the beat, so they are no longer really a deterrent. You can largely get away with whatever you like on site because the likelihood of an HSE inspector arriving is minimal. If we have a system whereby fines are bypassable or avoidable, as Jim has rightly described there, then what is the point? But then what is the deterrent? What is there in place to ensure that those in authority, and I'm talking about the managing director, operations director, project managers, regional managers, site supervisors, what is there to make them do what needs to be done. If we've already said, you're unlikely to get a custodial sentence because, the Health and Safety Executive and the Criminal Prosecution Service don't seem to be pushing for that. If you can also dodge or duck a fine, there is nothing there to prevent you just basically doing whatever the hell you like, which was kind of the idea of the article or the monologue. If there is no threat of penalty, be it financial or custodial or directorial bans, what is there to prevent you operating like a complete cowboy? Who do we have here? Mick Norton says, having appeared as an expert witness in both Scotland and England, there's no doubt they seem to be ahead of the game north of the border. Yeah, interesting that, isn't it? Interesting. I don't know why that is. Going back to, I fall back on this a lot. You look at Didcot, 9 years. Similar event in Ohio in the States, about a year afterwards, done and dusted in 18 months. So the Americans can do it. Apparently the Scots can do it. Why can't we in England? I don't know what Welsh Wales is like for these sort of things, but why? And ultimately, I'll go back to the very core of the monologue. Between 2023 and 2024, 51 people didn't make it home to their families. One a week. Okay? So for all of our grandstanding about, our workers are our greatest assets, we've built machines that are safer than ever before, we have health and safety warning signs up, we have health and safety briefings, we have toolbox talks, we have pre-start briefings, we have all of these things, we have training courses up the wazoo, we have more competence cards than a Las Vegas dealer, we've got all of those things, and 51 people, one a week, died at the hands of this industry. More than the year before, more than the 5-year average, and about 4 times more than the industrial average. The system we have right now, quite clearly, quite demonstrably, is not working. If it were working, you would be able to chart a gradual decline in the number of accidents and fatalities. That's not what we've got. The situation we've got is it was going down, and now it's going back up again. And why is that? Is that back? Does that trace back to? I'd be interested to look at the facts and figures. Does that track back to? Does it follow the same curve as the arrival of FFI? The loss of a lot of HSE inspectors. Is there a correlation between those two things? Has the industry just got more lax? Or potentially, bearing in mind the industry kind of lost 2 years to COVID and the resulting lockdown, are we now so keen, so eager to catch up that lost time that we are cutting corners? And we're cutting corners within an industry that is kind of allowing us to do it. Because the chances, as Dan Cullen said, he's never seen an HSE inspector, the chances are you could probably run a pretty bad ship in terms of demolition and construction. And the chances of you being caught, unless you've got a nosy neighbour with a mobile phone who's going to film you doing something stupid, the chances of you being caught are probably lower now than at any time in history. You might as well start sending children back up chimneys because, frankly, who's going to know? Dan Cullen says, the thing is, sometimes it's not industry's fault. Some people on sites don't understand what they see, read, and some foreign nationals. Yeah. Although, again, I've looked at that. There is no real correlation between that. I think when you look at the grand scheme of things, that foreign nationals only seem to die at the same rate that we do, which, suggests it's a systemic problem rather than a language or an understanding problem. They don't understand the dangers. I take your point. I don't know how many of the 51 that were killed in 2023, 2024 were foreign nationals. It might have been half of them. It might have been none of them. I honestly don't know the answer to that. But that doesn't actually change the situation. If we are sending men and women to work that have failed to grasp health and safety regulations and rules and regulations, then we as an industry are at fault. That's not their inability to grasp English from their Romanian background. That is our problem. That is our systemic failure. We've employed people that can't understand the language. We've not trained them sufficiently. We've not used translators. We've not translated toolbox briefings and RAMs and stuff like that. That is our problem. Hey, I don't want to go into the weekend angry, so I'm going to call it a day there. I think that's probably for the best. I'm back Monday, back Tuesday. No show Wednesday, Thursday, because I shall be in. I'm going to buy myself a pair of wooden clogs. I'm going to sit here tapping my heels together. I'm going to Holland, is what I'm saying. So yes, no show Wednesday, Thursday. Friday could be shaky, depending how the shoot goes and depending on the weather. But hopefully I'll be back on Friday to tell you about my travels. But back on Monday. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. Just to let you know, the weekend or the week after that, now let me try and get this right. I've not got the dates in front of me. But I'm thinking not next Wednesday, because I won't be here, but the Wednesday after that. How about we try to do this kind of Zoom thing where we get all of you in little windows on the show, 7:00 in the evening. How are you fixed for that? Now, let me think. I think Wednesday next week is the 4th, so the 11th. How are you fixed on the 11th, 7 p.m. on the 11th? Let me know, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Till then, everybody, go and have a fantastic weekend. Do please stay safe, because if you don't look after yourself, the chances are no other bugger will. Tristan Mays is going to be up for the chat. Good news, good news. People don't ever mention China when he's about. And he's actually said, got a bleep machine. I have, but it only works after the... I don't care. You can F and Jeff as much as you possibly... I don't care. Doesn't matter. It's for us. Am I free over the weekend? You're absolutely kidding. Yeah, I'm not free over the weekend at all. I've got party tonight. I've got father-in-law going to dialysis. No, not free for a moment. Mick says, our major contractors running the show without their own paid workforces have left their subcontractors to run riot without requisite checks. It's a good point. It's a very good point. Jim says, you'll never get rid of accidents altogether, as sometimes it's human error. Some folk just cut corners and go against the rules set out to them. And when that happens, it's not fair to blame the employer. Totally agree. Blame the governing body that doesn't regulate the industry properly. With their epoxy card system. Yes, their epoxy card system. See, and I was ending the show, and I will end it in just a moment, but just bear that in mind. You know, we've had a card scheme now in across industry for however many decades it is. If you could point at that and say, look, we introduced the card scheme, and look how accidents and fatalities, with the wider training and the more advanced training and the wider availability and use of cards, we can chart a decline and a decline and a decline in the number of accidents and fatalities. Not true. Here's the cards, here's the accidents. Makes no difference at all. So what is the point? I'll leave you to ponder that. Jan Groenveld has just joined us over on Instagram. Good morning, Jan. Thank you for joining us. Unfortunately, I'm heading out the door, but thank you very much indeed for being here. Everybody, do have a good weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Till then, look after yourselves. See you soon.